The DJI Osmo Pocket 3 has a pretty powerful focusing mechanism, which can even get you this close to your subject while still keeping it in focus. Well, according to the manufacturers of this macro lens adapter, simply clipping this to the front of your Pocket 3 will get you a lot closer. How close? Well, let's find out. I think the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 is probably one of the most misunderstood cameras on the market currently. I think most people tend to look at it as an action camera simply because of its compact size, but it is very different from an action camera. Whereas an action camera is designed to provide good image quality in all kinds of action situations and is designed to be rugged, the Pocket 3 is definitely not designed to be rugged, but it's more focused on providing the best possible image quality in a compact size. So there are some key differences. The most obvious, of course, is the 3-axis motorized gimbal head. Now, unlike an action camera which uses electronic image stabilization, the gimbal head provides for stabilization without compromising image quality. Secondly, the Pocket 3 uses a 1-inch sensor, which is significantly larger than most action cameras. And thirdly, the thing we're going to be talking most about today is the focus mechanism. Now, on an action camera, focusing is fixed, so basically everything beyond a certain distance, typically around 12 to 15 inches, is more or less in focus, so it's something of a compromise. In contrast, the Pocket 3 uses an active focusing mechanism, just like you find on a larger camera, which adjusts the focus to make sure that your subject is as clear as possible. Now, the focusing mechanism on the Pocket 3 does work very well, and it even has a pretty impressive close focusing capability, as close as around 4 inches or 10 centimeters away from your subject. But there are times when you might want to get even closer than that. For example, if you want to get up close and personal with nature, or maybe you want to show some close-up details on a product shoot. Whatever the case, that's where something like this comes in. This is the K&F macro lens adapter designed specifically for the Osmo Pocket 3, and today we're going to be checking it out. We're going to, excuse the pun, take a closer look at it. We're going to do some focus distance testing, and we're going to do some side-by-side comparisons to see what benefit this gives you over the standard lens. So there's a lot to cover, so as usual I'll place the chapters up here and on the video timeline, but before we get started, the usual disclaimer: this video is not sponsored, paid for, or influenced in any way. I purchased the K&F filter and my Pocket 3 with my own money, and the opinions are entirely my own. And of course, if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to give us a like, and also please consider subscribing to the channel for a lot more similar content. So let's get on with it. So let's go ahead and open up our K&F macro lens filter. As you can see, it comes with a microfiber cloth. It comes in this protective case. And if we open it up, you'll see it also comes with a screen protector for your Pocket 3. And here it is. Now, the first thing that struck me about the macro lens filter is it is pretty big and heavy, weighing in at 8 grams, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you put it side by side with the standard wide angle adapter that comes with the Pocket 3, which comes in at just 4 grams, you can see there's quite a difference in size. Now, that raises a couple of concerns, firstly being that once it's in place, will it stay firmly in place? I think the answer is yes. The magnets are pretty strong, and because this is a macro lens and really only a macro lens, it's not something you're going to have mounted while you are walking or running around. My other concern was whether the motors of the gimbal would be able to handle this okay. But as you can see, there's no sign of any motor jittering or anything like that, and the motors seem to be handling it just fine. When powering off the camera with the macro lens attached, you'll notice it behaves similarly to when the wide angle adapter is attached. It stores the lens facing the same direction as the screen, and it will actually fit in the travel case with the macro lens attached. Okay, here is my test setup for measuring the focusing distance. I have my Pocket 3 here aimed at this particular part of the target, which is the back of my Pocket 3 box, as you can see. And rather than follow things on the tiny screen, I am using the DJI Mimo app to follow this on my iPad. So focusing distance is defined as the distance between the subject and the sensor. Now, I don't exactly know where the sensor is, but we'll assume it's somewhere in the middle of the head here, which is lined up nicely with the front of this orange clip here. So as you can see right now, I have the camera 6 inches from the target, and obviously I have no problem focusing on that target. And I will share the app with you here on screen. So let's go ahead and move it up to 5 inches. Now, even though I have continuous autofocus enabled, I find I do have to keep tapping to help it in this particular situation. And once again, you can see it has no problem at 5 inches. Let's move it up to 4.5 inches. And as you can see, it's having no issue focusing at 4.5 inches. Let's move it up to 4 inches. Now it's starting to struggle a little bit. It's not quite fully in focus. If I try to go any closer, you can see it starts to get blurry, and if I try to focus on it, it just won't quite do it. And as you can see, it's no longer able to focus. So our optimum focusing distance is really just over 4 inches, around about 4 1/8 inch. Maybe around 4 1/4 inches is as close as we can get while maintaining a perfectly clear focus. So let's go ahead and put on our macro adapter. And let's start at 3 inches. Let's go ahead to 2.5 inches. And here you can see it really starts to come into its own. Let's go to 2 inches. And we are still able to focus perfectly at 2 inches. Let's try going to 1 3/4. And as you can see now, we're no longer able to focus. So let's drop it back a little bit. So as you can see, around about 1 3/4, maybe 1 7/8 is as close as we can get. And I would say just over 2 inches is where you get perfect focus. Now, it's important to note that the macro lens only works within a specific range. So for example, if I go out to 4 inches, you'll see it's already struggling to focus at 4 inches. And I have to go closer to around 3 inches before we will get a decent focus. So as you can see, the macro lens has a very limited focusing range of between 3 inches and around 2 inches. Here you can see the resulting images from both tests. And if we zoom in to the same magnification on both, you can clearly see the benefit of the macro lens. So, what is the verdict on the K&F macro lens? Well, first off, a couple of things about working with the lens. Firstly, that range is really limiting. You've got basically between 2 and 3 inches, and you have to ensure your subject is within that range, otherwise it is completely out of focus. And on the subject of focus, I would recommend in general using the single AF mode rather than a continuous autofocus. I find that with such small changes in the subject distance, the continuous autofocus often doesn't react, and if it does, you tend to get that lens breathing where the magnification changes during the shot, and it can be pretty distracting. So a good workflow is to select single AF, frame the subject that you are most interested in, and simply tap one time on the screen to get that in focus, then continue your filming. And one other thing to mention, even though I mentioned earlier that the gimbal motors seem to handle the weight of the macro lens just fine, I did have a couple of instances where I got a bit of a shake going on. This was generally when I was pushing the gimbal motor to one of its extreme positions, and I could normally cure this just by putting my hand over the head and securing it for a moment. But I think this is just something to be aware of. So overall, I was pretty impressed with the K&F macro lens. I think it certainly opens up new creative possibilities, but of course it is very limited in its scope. So that's going to cover it for another video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video today, please remember to give us a like and consider subscribing to the channel for a lot more similar content. If you have any comments, any questions, suggestions for future videos, please drop those into the comments section. Otherwise, thanks for watching.